Hey, what is up guys? This is Nishi from MST.TV here, back with another Market Watch episode. So for today, I want to highlight a couple of cards that I feel like should have been reprinted in Rarity Collection 2. Now in my eyes, these were definite misses. It was never going to be as good as Rarity Collection 1, but there were definitely some cards that could have been included that would have made it a better set overall, especially since a lot of these cards are key pieces of other decks in the current format. Hopefully we're going to see some of these in an OTS pack in Battles of Legend, the 2024 tins, or maybe Rarity Collection 3 if and when that gets announced, though of course those are still a ways away, and for now we're going to have to go without them or just deal with them being a higher price. Let's get started. Alright, so kicking things off, we'll start off with one that I think everyone thought was going to be reprinted in Rarity Collection 2. It's Diviner of the Herald. So this card is a key piece for the Voiceless Voice deck. It's not a Voiceless Voice card, but it lets you dump a fairy from your deck or extra deck. So in Voiceless, you're going to dump the Trias Hierarchia, and when Diviner is tributed, it brings Low out of the deck, which gets the deck going. Diviner is useful in other strategies as well, such as Drytron and Nouvelle. Those aren't like major meta contenders. However, the thing is that Diviner is sort of a big obstacle that makes it harder for players to build those other strategies because it's so difficult to find. Diviner was only printed in Lightning Overdrive and the 2022 tins, and both times it was a secret rare, so it was relatively difficult to pull. This card was up at $20 to $25 for either version. It had fallen since players were expecting it to be in Rarity Collection 2, so right now you can still get the originals for like 15 to 16, while the tin reprints are around 12 to 13. Still cheaper than before, but for a lot of casual players, this is just a card that's going to be generally difficult to find, which isn't great for casual players who just want to try out these newer strategies. Now, looking forward, I do think that there are two places that this card could be realistically reprinted. I could see it being in Battles of Legend Terminal Revenge, since there are Drytron cards in there and it's sort of on theme. It would be a pretty natural choice to include, and it could get a quarter century upgrade as well. The other place is in an OTS tournament pack as an ultimate rare. I think it would look really beautiful in that rarity, and it would go nicely with the Judge Mat that is out there as well. Hopefully this card does get a reprint soon, as it makes several decks in the current format a lot more easily accessible. Up next, I think the really obvious one missing was Triple Tactics Thrust. Now this card is one of the most powerful cards in the game, as it can be used to search for any normal spell or trap, and with all of the different hand traps that people are playing, it should be really easy to be able to activate Thrust. With reprints to cards like Talents, Imperm, and Ash Blossom in Rarity Collection 1, and then in Rarity Collection 2, Droll, Crossout, and Access Code, I feel like Thrust is one of the few generic cards in the game that still carries a pretty hefty price tag that's just out of the price range for your average player. The only other card that I can really think of being around there is like SP or Typhon, but it's definitely too early for those cards to be reprinted already. Anyways, Thrust should be in the tins, but since it got reprints in Maze of Millennia and then the OTS Tournament Pack Ultimate Rare Upgrade, I would have thought that Thrust would be a great candidate to be reprinted in Rarity Collection 2, especially since there aren't a crazy number of generic staples in the set at all. However, Thrust wasn't in there, which means we're probably going to have to wait until the 2024 tins drop before this card gets an easily accessible printing. For right now, the card remains expensive, with the Altis up at $70, the Secrets between $45 and $50, and then the Ultras at $40 to $45. Expect this card's price to remain pretty steady over the next couple of months, maybe even a little bit higher if players do decide that it's going to be an important card to run by the time that Nats rolls around, but for it to fall off after that as we approach the release of the tins. Alright, so there's one archetype specific card here, and it's Kashtira Theosis. So by now, most of the Kashtira cards have been reprinted. A ton of them were in the 2023 tins, Raitsoth was in Rarity Collection 2, and Arise Heart is banned. This actually just leaves Theosis as the one expensive piece for pure Kashtira decks. It's a very important card for the strategy, summoning another Kashtira monster out of your deck, which sets up Xyz plays or helps to build big boards so that you can push for game. Now, ever since Arise Heart was banned, Kashtira really hasn't been all that relevant. However, it's able to summon a bunch of really big bodies onto the field, and it can also run Dimension Shifter, so it's pretty viable as a rogue deck and can do well at the local or regional levels. It's probably just not taking a top spot at a YCS anytime soon. Now to me, I thought it would be a no-brainer that Theosis would be in Rarity Collection 2 alongside Raitsoth, especially since it seems extremely odd that they would just reprint each of the planets, but none of the other cards from those respective strategies. It really was just a little bit weirdly done. But yeah, I guess this means that Theosis won't be reprinted until the 2024 tins, which is going to be a little bit annoying because it doesn't have any applications anywhere other than pure Kashtira. and who knows, by then it's totally possible that Shifter will be already banned and Kashtira will have fallen off completely, who knows. But yeah, if you're a dedicated Kashtira player, then you already have this card from before and you can run them in your deck. If not, and you still have Theosis, I think now's probably a great time to sell them while there's no reprint around, especially since there's a very good chance that it gets reprinted in just a few months. Okay, so there's one other Kashtira card here technically. Honestly, I don't count this as a Kashtira card because of how generic it is, kind of like how I don't count Pankratops as a Dino Wrestler, but this one's Kashtira Fenrir. So pretty surprising that this card is actually still in the game at 3. It's just like a crazy, strong standalone card on its own, so much so that it's banned over in the OCG, but it remains completely untouched here. It's not a staple by any means, but I know it sees play in a ton of side decks, and it's also a good option in decks like Tenpai Dragons and Voiceless Voice because it's actually able to deal with a bunch of problematic cards or multiple problems entirely on its own. Now, Fenrir is something that would have been a perfect candidate for Rarity Collection 2. It already had its tin reprint and an ultimate rare printing, so Konami isn't missing out on the chance to include it in another product, and it's not like it's a completely dominant card where the game would go crazy if everyone had access to it, and even if it does become too strong down the road, right? I don't think anyone would be too shocked if they eventually limited or banned the card because of the precedent that was set by the OCG. Now, generally, I do think that generically used cards like this should be more accessible to players because they would be so simple for everyone to just pick them up and you can include them in any number of different decks. I guess that's just not going to be the case. With Fenrir, all of the printings remain relatively expensive still, with the altis up at $45 each, while the secrets and ultras are each in that $18 to $20 range. I don't see this card falling into Terminal Revenge. It was already in the 2023 tin, so I don't really see where this card is going to be reprinted anytime in the near future. It's definitely a card to keep an eye on over the next several months. Hopefully it does get slotted into Rarity Collection 3 whenever that gets announced. This is one that I actually don't see get talked about that often, but it's definitely something that should have been reprinted. It's Salamangreat Raging Phoenix. Now, this card is an absolutely amazing extra deck card for any number of the fire decks running around in the game right now. Basically, if you can make Promethean Princess, you want to go into this card after because it has the ability to recur itself out of the graveyard with a stat buff, and it's a really great card to use to bridge into Zealantis. It's a staple in Snake Eye extra decks, and even in decks where they only have a few different fire monsters. I've actually seen lists where they run a package of Promethean Princess, Zealantis, and Raging Phoenix just to be able to go and set up some of those OTKs. Now, at the same time, of course, it is a great card for pure Salamangrates, which have overperformed recently with the fire support that we've gotten this year, though obviously they're not exactly viewed as a top-tier meta threat. So with Raging Phoenix, the issue to me is that it came out in such an obscure set that no one really bought into. It's actually a really difficult card to find. Like, one of my friends was looking for one, but no one ever really is walking around and just has one of these extra in their trade binders or anything, so it's really annoying to go and look for. I would hope that the card will get a reprint that makes it easier to get, but unfortunately, just like with Fenrir, it doesn't really fit into any of the upcoming products that we have thematically. The hope is going to have to be that it gets chosen for the 2024 tins, which can reprint anything, like how they're reprinting Trident Dragyon randomly in there as well. It would be a bit late, and it would have been way cooler if it was in Rarity Collection 2, but as long as the fire decks are still a thing in the game, this card is going to be something that players are hoping will eventually get that easily accessible reprint. A couple of odd ones at the end here. The first one is Kurikara Div Incarnate. Now, this card is something that hasn't really seen that much meta play recently. It was great when Arise Heart was still a thing, but the card has mostly fallen off now. I think that some players try to tech it into some Snake Eye decks here and there, since it's a level 1 fire monster that can be searched, but that's about it. However, the card only has its original secret rare printing from Power of the Elements, and then its OTS Tournament Pack Ultimate Rare upgrade. Because it's not that meta relevant, it's not like the card is crazy expensive. The altis are around $20 to $25, while the secrets are $12 to $13. However, I think that this card would have been a great reprint to include in Rarity Collection 2, especially because the artwork is amazing, and I would have loved to see the card reprinted with all of the different rarities and all of those different textures. I believe that this card is going to be in the 2024 tins, as this card and the sprites are the only things that haven't been reprinted yet the description for the tins says that the Power of the Elements cards will be in there. I don't really think that giving this card another secret rare printing is going to do the card justice at all. With this one, I would personally let go of the secret rares since the card will probably get another secret rare printing, but the altis still look absolutely amazing and they're the highest rarity printing of the card for right now. Honestly, they're still so cheap for the alties that even if they do get a reprint in Rarity Collection 3, for example, with a quarter-century printing and the different alti printing, the cards shouldn't go down in price all that much, so this is definitely something that you guys will want to keep an eye on. And finally, one last card that I thought for sure would have been included, it's Zeus. So personally, I think that Zeus is one of the strongest extra deck monsters that's ever been printed. You put it on top of any Xyz monster as long as an Xyz monster battled that turn, and it literally sends all other cards on the field to the graveyard while being a 3000 attack and defense point body. Right now, Zeus isn't seeing that much play and it's not particularly relevant, but I can still imagine scenarios in the current game where having a Zeus on board and using its effect at the right time will just win you the game out of nowhere. With Zeus, it does have several different printings, and I think that's the only reason that the card wouldn't be in there. It has the Starlight from the original set, but it also has a quarter-century printing from Battles of Legend Monstrous Revenge, so maybe there's an argument that cards shouldn't be getting two different quarter-century printings. Now aside from that, the altis are relatively cheap at around $30 each, the secrets are 10 to 12, and then the ultras are 8 to 10. Now there's actually two different secret printings and two different ultra printings, which is kind of weird. Now technically, the printing that was in that starter set made the card really accessible, but no one really bought that product at all, so it's not like there's a ton of them that suddenly showed up on the market. With Zeus already having a ton of printings, it would have been really cool to see Zeus as like a collector's rare and then an ultimate rare. I think that would have been really awesome, but I guess that's something that we're going to have to wait for. This card feels both easy and difficult to find at the same time, given the types of reprints that it's gotten recently, so it would have made a ton of sense for it to be in Rarity Collection 2. Hopefully we still have a chance for it to be included in Rarity Collection 3 if and when that drops, and it's also a card that's so iconic that I could definitely see it getting an alternate art form somewhere down the road. Alright guys, that is all we have for today's Market Watch episode. Definitely interesting to see how Rarity Collection 2 has affected the market, and how it's similar and different to Rarity Collection 1, right? A lot of the time, the cards that aren't reprinted in the set are just as notable as the cards that do get reprinted. The other thing I do want to do is talk about some of the things that we're seeing with the market, with the Rarity Collection 2 cards themselves, so we'll be going over those cards sometime later this week as well. Anyways guys, if you did enjoy today's Market Watch, please make sure you let me know by hitting that thumbs up button. Make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below. Hit subscribe if you haven't already, and until next time guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.